Welcome back to is this episode 4 already? Of
Yeah.
What Katie Draws. What are we gonna draw today, Katie?
Well, today I think I'm gonna do some lighting effects because I know you've been asking me about like how to do lighting and things before. So yeah.
Lighting is weird and ooh, my mic is happy to see us. Did you see it was poking down into the screen there? Yeah, lighting and like we should start with the basics, but I am all, like lighting from behind and lighting from two different sources and just, lighting like just regular average standard, nothing special about it lighting. Like it is a trick for me, so it'd be really cool to watch you draw it.
Yeah, I've been kind of thinking about how to do it, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do like a circle and then just like light a sphere because it's probably going to be a bit easier to start with. When I first started learning to draw, I actually did it with a drawing of an egg cup that was in an old a drawing book because I had one of the books that I found when I was like, I don't know, 6 was like this how to draw book, and it had loads of different exercises you could do. I wish I still had it because I can't remember which book it was now, but yeah, one of the exercises was to draw an egg cup and do the light from different ways. And if you're struggling with lighting, one of the things that I do recommend is getting like an object and a directional light such as this one, and then you just move the light around the object, or use a torch or something like that. It does help.
Or a flashlight if you're in America.
A flashlight. It's a torch where I come from.
I think it's a torch everywhere except America. I think it's only a flashlight in America. The more I talk to people from around the world, the more I think that we're the only ones who call it a flashlight.
Yeah, I think so. Well, I mean, I don't know, because it could be called flashlights elsewhere. I don't know. So, right, are we gonna...
Yeah, well, are you ready to draw? Because let's get your finger up on here and
I kind of
watch you do stuff.
I had a bit, I tried to get myself a bit organized and then gonna get confused, but I think this will do for now. Right, so we've got the circle here that we're going to use as a sphere. Can you see the the cursor moving on the screen, Sarah? Or is it not?
No.
Oh, that's a bit irritating.
No.
Okay,
I thought I could before, but I'm not sure why I can't now.
Oh well. Okay, so whenever something's lit, you always get well, from the very basics, you always get the light hitting the surface that's closer to it, and the shadows behind it. But that's a very simplified way of saying it, because something I found with lighting over the years is that you get a lot of reflections of surfaces underneath as well. Mm-hmm. So say that if you've got a sphere sat on a table and it's being lit from one side, then you will get some backlight coming from the actual table surface as well. And it quite often it will affect the color. If it's a very strongly colored table, you'd get like the colored image from underneath. So I'll start off with doing a bit of lighting to explain this. I can just...
I can see your cursor. I guess your computer was just pissed off for... It's okay.
Yeah,
we're good now.
So we're gonna have like yeah, well, we're gonna have like a... Oh, damn it, why aren't you working? Oh, I see. Right, it doesn't matter. From the top right is the corner. That's where the top right corner is where we're going to have the lighting coming from. So, so you get the highlights obviously coming in from the top. So the light's coming from the top, and the strongest highlight is always going to be around where the light is hitting it the most.
The most direct lighting.
Yeah. This is kind of like a direct lighting. That the closer the light is, the bigger the actual light patch is going to be, actually. But this is just a basic sphere to start with. Now you see, as it's getting further away from the light, it's going to get darker and darker. We'll come in with a bit of a shadow coming in now to make it look like more of a sphere. So that's a very basic lighting the sphere. Now, if you had sort of like, say, an indentation or something in the sphere, you'd get the shadow blocking the actual side that the light's coming from. But you also might get if it was like a crater, say, you'd maybe get a lighter edge where it's catching the light too, just on the other side of it.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I'll give it like I'll invert the selected area. So on a different layer, I'm going to do a color for the table and for the surface underneath. It's not necessarily a table, but just to actually demonstrate what I'm talking about. So here we have like a base color. Now it doesn't look right without an actual shadow underneath. So what would happen with the shadow is that you would go away from the actual light source, because this is kind of coming from the front. So you get a shadow coming in a bit more like that underneath. That might be quite dark, but what you'll also find with something like this is that how close the light source is actually affects how big the shadow is as well. Like if you had something directly overhead, you'd only get a very small shadow underneath. But if it was really low down, you'd get a long shadow behind it. And it's worth, like I said, with the flashlight and the light, just moving stuff around and seeing what it does to the shadow. So going back onto the sphere, I'll show you what I mean about the light from underneath. So because the surface underneath is lit slightly, I would go with a slight color underneath. So it will actually you'll get some reflection underneath of the color. So if the really strong light is hitting the surface underneath, it will be reflecting back onto it. I think I've gone a bit too far there, but it'll be sort of dark around where the shadow is underneath.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll get the light coming through underneath. So it's actually kind of coming out a little bit metallic on this one.
Yeah, well, it works.
And depending on the surfaces, you'd get like reflections and stuff coming up. So say if this was like a metallic shiny surface, you'd maybe get a few reflections coming in like that. But which it might have a few highlights and things in. But the main highlight would be here. So yeah, that's one way of doing it. I can just like erase the whole thing and start again, really, just to try and wait, this one. So if I erase this, and we'll try and do a different way of lighting. So just go that selection, and I'll just take this back to where it was. So I think was it backlighting you said you wanted to see, Sarah?
Yeah, lighting from behind when there's two sources of lighting coming in from different places.
Yeah.
And I mean these tips all work regardless of what color their light is, as long as you're picking the right color. So
yeah.
But even then, like picking the colors can sometimes be a trick too, because
yeah,
you don't necessarily, like, if you got a yellow light coming in, you don't want to necessarily pick white as the brightest color, the brightest shade of yellow, and etc.
No, it would make if it was a yellow light, it would. Well, I can demonstrate. If it was a yellow light, put the right layer on. So coming from behind, I'm on the wrong layer. got the invert selection again. Right, am I in the right layer this time? Yes, I think so. Right, so a yellow light coming from behind would, as long as it's like the bright color, it doesn't necessarily have to be white. So if it's the light's coming from directly behind, you quite often get like a halo effect. Now, especially if whatever you're drawing is kind of hairy. Now, I'm not going to use a full black on this one because it's got a yellow light, so it would have like sort of more yellower shadows as well. So you'd get, again, the further away from the light, the darker it's going to be. That'll be backlighting it, and you might get a little bit of a dark, but also something to consider is that sometimes
my microphone keeps like it's like loose and it keeps creeping down. And it's freaking me out. I keep pushing it up and it just keeps tipping back down. I gotta tighten it. God. Okay. I'm listening, but this is just distracting me.
Right, so invert select. So this shadow here is going to be it's going to come towards you. So it's going to be slightly altered, but because you see that this yellow light, and it would affect the actual surface it's sat on as well, so it wouldn't necessarily be this like orange color. You'd probably also get lighting behind on the surface itself, which again would be stronger further away. Anything blocking that light coming from behind would create a shadow as well. So say you'd have, I don't know, you just have some sort of object here which it would also form a shadow, but sort of an elongated version of itself, but then you'd also get the backlighting on it. So it's the wrong button there. Okay, so you get that. Now, my favourite thing to do with backlighting is if there's something that has got hair, because if it's got hair, then the hairs really catch the actual backlighting. So, like, I'm going to make the sphere hairy, for example. So like it's going to have, yeah, well, maybe not like a tribble, but you see, it would have the bright.
It's hairy balls, though.
Yeah, it has the bright coloured hairs and things coming off it. Anything that's really thin can show light through it. Like if you've ever shone like a torch through like that part of your fingers with, and you can see the light through it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing with stuff going behind things, which is obviously if it's alive and has a blood source, it usually kind of looks pink, but this doesn't. So hair would really catch the light quite dramatically, and that probably would cause a little bit more of a hairy shadow as well. But I'm not going to bother doing that just now.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favourite things to do is the actual backlit hairs and stuff. So if we were going to say that this was like even brighter, then you'd have even more of a if the light was closer, you'd get like even more dramatic of a halo effect. So you'd get like it would be really, really bright around the edges, but you wouldn't necessarily see anything inside. It would just be even darker in the middle, and you'd get just the halo. Mm-hmm. So you see, that would be quite low down behind it. Mm-hmm. Then if in that case, the shadow would probably be also a lot longer as well. So you'd get, which is too big, but yeah, if it was like if the light was really low down behind it, you'd get a much sort of darker shadow. So yeah, that would probably be stretching over that way, because the light beams would be probably, if it was right behind it, would be coming like this direction. So so that's the direction the light's going to be coming from, and that way you can sort of see where the actual where the shadow is going to be in some respects. It's, what am I doing? So, right, what we're saying, 2 light sources next. I'm just gonna go over this again. So, just to clear things up. I mean, it gets more complicated when the more complicated of a surface that there is. So, like a face, and like the planes of like, well, I sometimes use a horse's face for an example, because there's so many different planes that the light can hit on a horse's head. But at the moment, I'm just going to just clear this up again so we can do 2 light sources. Right. So, pick 2 directions for the light then that you'd like to see.
Ooh. Let's see if I can pick any tricky ones. I was gonna say, how about one directly behind and one directly in front, but that's stupid. So, like, the sun coming down from whatever angle from far above, and then, like, maybe something shining up from underneath? Like, the lower part, I guess? Like, so coming in at 2 different angles there?
Yeah, I mean...
like my microphone is doing again?
So, like, one coming down from behind and one coming up from at the front, then.
Yeah, something like that.
That'll be interesting.
The same concept should apply to everything, right? So hopefully, if I can figure it out. Excuse me. Oh, it is too hot to exist today. Like, it got too hot too fast. Like, it's not fun when it's 90 degrees, but it's not fun when it's 90 degrees in April, when last week it was like 40 degrees.
Yeah. So that would be your... Yeah. So this would be your sort of highlight from above. Then I'm trying to... Let me try and process this. You've given me a tricky one. So that would cause this sort of effect from light from above. However, if you were going to light from underneath, you would probably also... I think the shadows would probably kind of cancel each other out, but I'm going to have, like, I don't know, the light source hitting here from the front as well. Yeah. So... Yeah. You kind of got to think what that does to the shadows. It is a bit more tricky that sort of way, but as it's a sphere, it's not that bad. So, yeah, I might go around that a bit more. Make it a bit darker. That makes the shadows a little bit layer again, aren't I? I don't do layers very often. They just drive me mad.
Layers are for amateurs and people who don't like headaches, I guess.
I think you'd probably still get a bit of a shadow going on, because you'd probably have a light source that was here, like shining up underneath it, but maybe a fainter sort of shadow, so get more of that background color and just soften the shadow out quite a lot like that. Because if the sun was really like bright behind it, it wouldn't actually make too much of a shadow. So, yeah. So that I think that's kind of like that lighting that you mentioned there. There's there's all sorts of tricks about like moving the light closer and moving it further away as well. It affects the shadows. These are exercises I haven't done in quite a long time, because this is one of the things that I do recommend that beginning artists do quite a lot, is just observe the lighting effect. There's a brilliant thing called Anatomy 360, which is, you have to buy them, but it's 3D scans of like life models. And the software it comes with actually lets you change the lighting, and it like you can set where the lighting is, what color it is, how bright it is, and then you can move the light around, and you can also move all the way around the actual 3D scan of the person as well. They're kind of useful.
Cool.
Yeah, I do have a few. I keep forgetting I've got them. It's yeah. They do things like expression packs, and like they've scanned in different people's faces when they're making different expressions and stuff. So that's quite useful if you're trying to figure out the lighting as well. I mean, they're not free, apart from they occasionally do like free samples of like a skull or whatever. But it is useful if you're doing something really complicated with like a certain expression, and you need to see what if like the light's doing in a certain angle or something. That's really good for doing that. It's kind of like a 3D software, but it is a 3D scan. Like, you know, it's a bit more like what used to be Poser, I guess. So I could probably just do a quick horse head and then start showing you the difference of lighting on that as well.
Sounds good.
Okay, so I'm just going to do a new document for this. This is my standard background color. I don't tend to work from white, so let's try just drawing a horse. No, it's not going to be the most accurate horse in the world, but
doesn't need to be, as long as we can. I mean, I guess you don't even need to, we could call it cubist or something if you wanted to make it unrecognizable as a horse. You could still call it a horse if you call it cubist, right?
Listen, horses are one of the things I learned to draw with, so they're one of the things I can draw without actually looking at a reference. So here we go. So we're just going to do a very quick horse's head. So that's what it could be. This is going to be very rough, just for the purposes of doing this demo. So.
Yeah. I was just adjusting the mic arm. Jeffrey was helping me.
Okay.
We'll see if it continues to creep down into the camera view.
Okay, this is.
I'm sure people know that I have a mic, but you know.
Right. I don't suppose it matters. You know, it's as long as it's not hitting you on the head or anything, that's fine.
It's an excellent horse head already.
Thank you. It's probably not 100%.
Definitely tell it's a horse. It's not a cubist horse.
Well, like I said, when I learned to draw, like when I was a little kid, I just used to sit there copying pictures out of Horse and Pony magazine and stuff like that. So, you know, not necessarily, you know, respecting copyright or anything, but I was 6, so you know, I didn't really understand that back then.
Yeah, I think that horses might be one of the things that I drew a ton of when I was a little kid drawing stuff. It was a lot of horses, always with big fat rumps. I didn't ever get that proportion down. Maybe it was because I had all those My Little Ponies.
Yeah.
They have big fat butts.
I'm gonna lock that layer. So we'll do it on a different layer. So as an example of where the light's coming from. So the light's going to be coming from. Oh, it helps if I take it off. Erase it, doesn't it? Right. So the light's going to be coming from down this way. So on this layer. So on a horse, you've got quite a lot of different planes of you know, the features that would catch lighting like that. So
if anybody's just tuning in, Katy's just demonstrating how to do lighting, and before she was showing us on just a smooth round sphere, and now she's showing us on an organic figure, which is a horse, not a cubist horse, a regular horse.
Yeah, so you'd be getting the actual planes of that's closest to the sun. Obviously, it would be catching the light a bit more. It gets a bit more complicated on something like this because you know, there's so many different pieces of anatomy that actually would get hit by light like that. And it also depends on how strong the light is as well. So you'd get the light coming in from this side. Everything on this side of it would be in shadow. So, the ears and everything. And of course it's deeper into the nose, so that would be quite a dark area. Yeah. And the horse's muzzles are quite dark in any case, usually. Unless they've got pink muzzles, which some, like Clydesdales and stuff.
Yep. Palominos, lighter colored horses, they have the lighter muzzles, but most of them do have dark, don't they?
Yeah, so this is kind of a dramatic kind of lighting coming onto this horse. Yeah, so yeah, so the this sort of light might pick up a few of the actual wispy hairs as well, but maybe not too many because it's not completely backlit. And you'd get the eye picking up bits as well. So my pen nib is feeling a bit scratchy. I need to actually replace it, and it's kind of distracting me. It's just making a really grating sound, and it's getting on my nerves.
I think I know what you're talking about. I get that one on my when I'm trying to draw on my iPad. If I start getting well, I haven't had to replace a nib yet, but I think the one that I've got is kind of getting to the point where maybe I should.
Yeah, I swear on the Wacom tab. Yeah, the Wacom tablets now, that the nibs just are really soft compared to what they used to be, and you just have to replace them all the time. I don't really know if this is it HP. I can't remember what brand this is. Yeah, it's an Artist Pro 16, whichever brand that is. I think it's is it HP, XP? XP, yeah, XP. So yeah, it's a really good pen actually. This, but I'm assuming that seeing as it's an XP, it's going to be a much cheaper to buy a new packet of nibs than Wacom is, because it's like I tried to get a new pack of nibs for Wacom and it was like £15 or something, which is like 10. And these little pieces of plastic probably cost them like 20p to make or something. It's ridiculous. I got like the same for a different brand, and it was like, I don't know, about £5 for the packet, which is. And
of course, there's no incentive for them to make a quality product, because if they make a crappy product, then we have to buy it more often. I'm ranting about capitalism on an art show.
Perfect place to rant about capitalism. Artists are always starving.
During the Renaissance, artists didn't starve. They had their sponsors, and that was
some of
pretty cool to be an artist then.
Yeah. So this would be light coming from this angle on a horse. For the most part, there's still a few bits and pieces around here that you sometimes get the veins and stuff coming up on their faces, which tends to be more like thoroughbreds and stuff for that. But say for a different type of lighting, we'd have the light coming from underneath, which is something you probably don't tend to see on a horse. So you kind of have to use your knowledge of horse anatomy, which because I worked at a riding school, I'm quite familiar with the different planes on a horse, because one of my jobs was used to have to like groom them for riding lessons and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd be the one that's putting the tack on them and getting them brushed and everything.
Yep.
So this I might get a touch of the ear coming from here, but yeah. So this is a bit more of a spooky angle. I think everything always kind of looks a bit more spooky when the light's coming from underneath. So you get the light coming from that direction. This is kind of just rough. Oh, this is really annoying me. I don't have time to actually grab my pen nibs and change them whilst I'm doing this, unfortunately. Yeah, so like where it would have been the most lit before, as you can see, if you go onto this previous one, you see it's lit at the across the top of the cheekbone, whereas at this bit, it's that part of it is in shadow. One of my favourite lightings for taking photos in is actually indirect bright light, which is like when it's cloudy, but the sun's very bright behind it, so it's very bright, but it's not actually putting any directional shadows on stuff, because it just seems to make things look so much. It's much more clarity, because I think a bright light tends to hide a lot of details in some ways. So that's a spooky horse.
Nice.
Yeah, so that probably, if would more of a darkness coming here. This is probably quite a close bright light actually, because it's making the shadows more pronounced.
Mm-hmm.
You'll probably catch a bit there. So that's underlighting. Always makes stuff look spooky. It's quite a good way of adding a bit of drama to stuff, but it's finding a way to actually put the light source in that's a bit of a problem. So let's say a backlit horse on this one. Oh, pardon me. So we probably get the outlines coming quite strong, and yeah, so completely backlit, but you wouldn't get highlights in the center of the mane, the mane, but you'd get the actual fringe hairs. If it's where it's thickest, you wouldn't get the same the light shining through it, and that would probably affect how that looks too. But this whole area would be very dark. You do get some lighting in it, because you're always going to get a little bit of reflected light off other surfaces around it. So say that there's a reflected surface coming from underneath. I will do this first though, just to make the outline look a bit more obvious. But say, like a lot of horses have quite a lot of hair, like on their chins and everything. So the light coming from behind would catch the hairs quite a lot. So you'd get all this sticking up. Now, if you actually had say it was up against a wall or something at this side here, that was, well, let's say an orange wall, you would get a little bit of that light sort of reflecting onto it, and just in places. So it would act like a very muted light at this side. Yeah, so the still probably get me quite dark inside the ears, but the light on this side would very faintly catch some of the highlights if it's up against something that's reflective, especially say if someone's wearing like a highly reflective jacket. You know those fluorescent jackets that people get when they're wearing, you know, to hide stuff. Like that really does. If you've ever noticed anything that's stood next to something wearing that, you'll probably quite often see like a bright yellow patch on it where it's actually reflecting onto the surface.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so that's a strong light coming from behind, but like an orange light coming from underneath.
Yeah.
And it might affect the colour of that a little bit, but yeah, you'd get quite a strong outline wherever the hair is as well. Yeah. So that's backlit horse. So I'm just trying to think of any other lighting you'd like to see.
Let's see. I like to see the backlighting and the attention that you put to the hairs to make it realistic, like on the horse there. That was really interesting to watch, and
it would also do it with stuff like cobwebs. So
oh yeah.
So I'll just delete this. I'll just do it on a new layer. So say you had a post or something. I'll just do like a. So we've got a post here, and like I don't know, something like a thorn bush or something like that. I don't know, just do something like this. So, and I'll give it a bit of lighting as well. So if it say it's going to have like a backlighting behind it, I'd put that on a different layer and maybe a soft. That's not soft. I'll change back to airbrush. Have like a soft color behind it with a soft light coming through, and now you'd just give it a little bit of a shadows and light sort of effect on it. Right, back to the actual thorns and stuff. So it's got a soft, that soft light coming through. Now you're always going to get something like this. You're always going to get the colours of the actual post coming through as well. So you'd probably have like the brownish grey of the post, but just for this example, we're just going to have it like showing a showing the colours on the edges of this. Now, just to give it a bit of lighting, because you'd probably see a little bit of the colour of the actual plant as well, but very muted. It does the light does tend to affect the colours quite a bit. So this backlighting on this would it will shine through the cobwebs, because if you've ever noticed like cobwebs on if you're out on a walk and you're looking towards the sun, you'll see the cobwebs floating across in front, and they're really easy to see then. The only other time I think they're that easy to see is if you've got like raindrops on them and stuff in the mist.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So that would be a cobweb that you wouldn't necessarily see it if it didn't have the light coming through from behind it. So it's not a very accurate one, but yeah. So you probably have dark but muted colours in this to show. I've made some good old-fashioned oil painting brush. So obviously, if something is dark in shadow, then it will be relatively close to the colour as it is in light. However, I've often found that if you're doing shadows, you don't necessarily need to do them the same colour as the light, because if you remember the drawing, the painting I did of the roadie with the sort of light when it looks really startled.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I just wonder if I can find that as an example. Let me just see. Let's see if I can bring that up, because it's quite a good example of a very different coloured shadow to the light. Right. Right, so just a second. Bring this in. Right, so you can see that this is one of my acrylic paintings. Now you can see the actual shadows here are very, very cold coloured. You go through the drop with the eyedropper. Where is it? There. It's kind of like a very cold grey sort of colour. In some cases, kind of almost like a bluey grey, even though it's not coming up as a bluey grey, because it was very different to the actual tones I was using in the light. You see, it's much brighter in the light, and the shadows on this were very cold compared to the warm light, and it does, especially in this bit in the background. You see that's the sort of what I mean with the bluey grey shadows with the very warm highlights in front, and the difference in tones can really actually make a difference with how deep things look, because a lot of shadows look more deep when they are blue or purple. So I mean, this is obviously actually an acrylic painting, but it's similar in the actual digital way as well. So
yeah, I mean, it's a little different working with when you're working digitally, working with light instead of paint, additive versus subtractive, blah blah blah. But
oh yeah, I mean,
yeah, but the same concept applies, so yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, so if I like did this sort of post kind of well, not necessarily greeny, but more like a colder grey, then did a warmer highlight on the front, it would jump out quite a lot. The highlights jump out much more if you have them with a colder, greener sort of background. It's but worth looking at the contrasting colours for that. So like yellow and blue, or in a lot of cases, purple makes the shadows look deeper. You see, that is making it look a lot more, a lot deeper in the shadows. Just having that contrasting sort of greenish colour in there. I'll try a bit of purple, so it kind of looks a bit deeper as well. And you see how that sort of purpley dark is knocking it back quite a lot, especially when you have like a bright yellowish sort of lighting at the front. The purple and oranges tends to be the ones that go together quite well for that, because they're contrasting colours. Doesn't really show it as much on this wheel here, but you can kind of see like a bit more of a contrast. It's worth investing in a colour wheel to actually show you what the contrasting and harmonious colours are. It does make quite a bit of a difference to your art practice, I think.
Yeah, it is nice to have one of those. Yeah.
Yeah. So you see
they're not expensive. They're just, you could probably get one at a print shop, like a Staples or something.
Yeah, or you can just download one from the internet.
Yeah, you can get one off the internet. You can order one on Amazon if you want the physical one. It's good to study, though. Very good to study.
Yeah. And different colours if their opposing colours really make each other stand out. There is a particular painting, I think it's by Turner. I'm not sure. And it's like a really blue-green sea that's really stormy, and there's just this tiny little red boat in the middle. And because it's a contrasting colour, your eye is immediately drawn to this little red boat. And it's just this tiny speck of red in this one bit, and it really looks obvious. Yeah, so like in some, if the grass is really, really thin, it would have like the light coming through it as well, or highlighting it, the same as you'd get the cobwebs. So if it's really fine, feathery sort of seed heads and stuff, you'd get the on a backlit thing, you'd get it would pick up the featheriness. You'd maybe get like if it's slightly thicker stem, you'd get a bit of a darker core, but you'd still get the backlit edges to it.
Very cool.
Yeah, so but you need to pay attention to the actual color of the light, because like this now doesn't look quite right with it being white, is as all the other highlights are a bit more yellow, because it needs to be a similar color.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Of course, you get like things like mist will make a difference as well. So if you get the misty sort of look to things, it does soften stuff out quite a bit. You'd still get the light coming through it if it is bright enough, but it would be very muted. You wouldn't get the same shadows and stuff. It sort of makes everything a bit grey if it's misty, whereas if it's like a really bright sunny day, all the shadows would be very, very pronounced. So that's a bit more like what it would be in a mist. And then you'd maybe get a few bits, bits of wood grain and stuff showing in it, or bits of lichen or stuff like that. Get adding a bit of texture and stuff to it. Then maybe sometimes if you've got like water droplets, that also catches the light as well. So you'd get like the little dots showing where the water's caught the light from behind too. And in some pictures I have even like done the little just to make it look really, really shiny. I've done the whole sort of, it must be too small, but the light catching sort of starburst effect thing, because that's kind of what it looks like to my eyes sometimes when there's lights coming in the distance. But I wouldn't overdo it, but it can sometimes add something to it, especially if you're doing something like a fantasy drawing. Yeah, so that it gives it a bit more of a definition behind things. Then you'd maybe get like a row of droplets underneath too. You get the sparkles coming off it. I quite like that actually. It kind of needs an owl or something sat on it, which I mean I could attempt to do without reference, but yeah, that probably wouldn't work too well.
Feathers are a different show.
Yes, it did take me quite a long time to do feathers in that picture I did for the Emerald Quest cover.
I remember.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose I could try and do like an owl set on this. Just how long have we got? But it's
I mean, you can go at least. We have to go for at least 10 more minutes, but we can go for a little longer. So you got some time.
Okay, so we'll.
I mean, you showed all the basic lighting things that you wanted to show, right?
Yeah, I think so. Just
bonus basic. Owl.
Let's try an owl here. off the top of my head, an owl. So, okay. And it'll be a barn owl because they're the most owly owls to me. So, I'm going to do it in like a mid-tone to start with because it's, just because of the lighting, it's not going to be a real bright one, and the light will be coming from behind it anyway. So, but owls have got quite a nice roundish sort of. Barn owls have got a nice sort of heart-shaped face, and then you get the colour coming into the wings here. Oh, they're so difficult to get right. Or barn owls. Why did I choose a barn owl? Right. So that would probably have a bit of the backlighting on here. And it's totally not in the right scale for this either, but it doesn't really matter. So
maybe it's just a very big spider.
Or a very thick vine.
Very big spider, a very small owl. Yeah.
Yeah. So barn owls tend to have like a bit of a. They always have the big the nose crest in the middle. That's the. It tends to come out like this. The beak could be here, and then with barn owls, it's them lovely dark eyes they've got.
Excuse me.
Although if it was really misty, it probably would really misty. It probably would look kind of a bit more dull anyway in the eyes. They tend to have a bit of a brown bit coming down here, with like the feathers coming down towards the beak.
Mm-hmm.
You get little bits of feathers rimming the face as well. So in this, you'd get the strongest outline with the backlighting would be around the edges, but you'd still, because they're very white on their faces, you'd still get a bit of light coming off. You know, it still would appear bright, just not as bright as the actual highlight behind them.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, a bit of. I'm going here. I am definitely not doing the actual patterns on a barn owl in this space of time. There.
Yeah, I don't think that. Yeah, like you got a couple more minutes. That's pushing it.
You probably get a bit of a highlight going in the eye, but not much of one. I mean, it's not going to look entirely dark, but it's not going to be like a real bright white highlight as well, because you've got it's not got the right light for a bright white highlight. That's the only trouble with like doing something in this sort of lighting, is that to be accurate, you wouldn't have when people make stuff look alive, they'd have like that little white dot in the eye.
Mm-hmm.
But it wouldn't necessarily be accurate in this sort of lighting.
Right.
You might get a bit of reflection off something though. So you get like the dots and everything going there. Because feathers are always kind of tricky, because the structure of the feather is the actual the pin shaft, and then you've got the filaments coming from either side of it.
Mm-hmm.
Now barn owls have greyish sort of patches on their wings, which when you look at them are actually quite complicated, because they have like little barring effects all over them if you look at them really close up. But you also what you get is like little. I can't really see it like that, but you get little bits where it's like black, white, black on like little lines. I don't know if you can see that from there, but you get these little sort of markings, but they're not like in really wide bars. It's just like little bits like that, and then sort of a zigzaggy pattern in the actual grey bits, and then you'd get random bits of like more orangey colour as well coming in. I have to say it's not the most accurate owl I've ever drawn, but
it's just a bonus owl. It's fine.
Yeah, it's a bonus. Yeah. Get the beak coming down here, and a little bit brighter like that. I really like the actual. Did you ever see the owl in Ori in the Blind Forest? It's a game on like the Xbox thing.
It's not ringing a bell, but maybe.
Or in the Blind Forest. They're like a platform game, and they've got an owl is one of the bad guys in the first one, and it's such a beautiful owl. I really love the way they've animated it. But if you've not seen it, it's a beautiful game. It really is.
I'll have to go check it out.
Yeah.
I don't die of heat stroke first. It's so hot.
Yeah, so you see, it's kind of, even though that they would have quite dark markings on the owl, in this sort of light with like a very sort of misty, soft lighting from behind, it wouldn't look as dark. You wouldn't get any like full black color shadows in it. It would be a very muted sort of color, just because of the way that the actual atmospherics are affecting things.
Yep, that makes sense.
So there you go. And if you got like any feathers sticking out, they would catch the light quite well as well. I've kind of forgotten what owl feet look like, so I think
really weird.
Yeah, they've got like claws and stuff, but
yeah, I saw a picture of somebody who had extended the owl's legs completely, and how most of their body that we think is their body is actually leg. It's crazy.
If you actually touch the head of an owl, which I have because I went to a falconry centre once and they let us actually touch the owls. You're not really supposed to because it affects them. They don't really mind, some of them, especially if they've been like hand reared and stuff, but it affects the oils in their feathers, I think. But if you touch the head on a barn owl, your fingers just sink into feathers. Their skulls are tiny, and owls are not very intelligent. I know there's the wise owl sort of thing, but most of their head is eye socket.
That is very interesting. How did owls come to be considered wise?
They are
not. They have tiny little brains.
They really are. It's like, interestingly though, that some of the owls have like an eardrum that's higher on one side than it is on the other, because it lets them triangulate sounds.
Oh, cool.
Me being a nature nerd again. You see like seed heads and stuff coming out from behind as well, because these would be backlight lit too. So, yeah. It maybe be slightly darker at the back than I'm showing it, just because it's away from the light a bit, but you see because it's backlit, it would be darker at this side, I think. It's always worth like looking at photos of stuff in different lightings. I've got like so many pictures saved for reference for lighting and stuff. Just,
And
you know, if
I
you see
agree.
anything,
Like if you just get any random object laying around your house and just shine a light at it and study that too. Like that helps a lot.
yeah, but it also helps if you have an idea of an object in a 3D form. Because I did a lot of sculpting when I was younger, it gives you an idea of like how stuff goes together. Because if you ever want to try and get the idea of how something is formed, you make it like a model of it, and then try and just put your hands around it and stuff. It really makes a difference of like your perception of something, or get like a toy of it or something, but like one that looks really good or a good model. But I found that if the more like your brain can process something as a 3D shape, the more accurate your drawings are going to be.
Sure, makes sense.
Yeah. So that's kind of like, not too bad for an owl. It's completely the wrong proportion, but
it looks like an owl. It's good.
Yeah,
it looks like an owl.
And that's basically what the lighting's going to look like from that angle on something as well.
And it rounded out the amount of time that we have beautifully.
Yeah.
We're just a couple minutes over an hour now, so you got the full hour in. It's great. Lovely.
Yeah. So like this is kind of a soft lighting because it's got a lot of atmospheric like moisture and stuff. It wouldn't just flew past my face then. It would, if it was a clear day, then it would be much sharper and you wouldn't get the lovely soft effect. I love this lighting for stuff. It is like it makes stuff look so dreamy.
Yeah, well, even just in this quick, like you just threw this together in the last 15-20 minutes here, and it looks so is ethereal the word? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Like it looks so cool.
Yeah, I mean the sort of lighting effect you need to take atmospherics into account. Recently I've started actually taking photos of the skies with my phone quite a lot, because it's amazing how much like the different, just a bit of atmospheric moisture can actually change the clouds. Like on a really like today there was this beautiful sort of light that was a really soft light on the clouds, and it almost made them like kind of look unreal. It was so fluffy looking. It just looked like someone had painted them there. They weren't real at all. Your brain doesn't process them as real, but it was beautiful. And it's like I've just started taking photos of everything. Like if you have a mobile phone, just like take photos of textures, of interesting objects, of skies, of anything. I was at my friend's house the other day, and one of her shed doors was just covered in peeling paint, and the way it looked was just so cool. I just had to take photos of it. But all this reference gathering is really, really important for an artist. I've been doing it for years. Absolutely. And you're not necessarily going to use everything that you take photos of, but it's like an image bank of stuff that you can refer to, because you may think that you know what something looks like, but you don't. Not until you've actually drawn it like loads and loads and loads of times. I've just got whole sketchbooks of just studies of all different poses and like ages, and just trying to get them.
So many things that you look at a million times a day.
Yeah.
And you just, until you actually try and draw it, you don't really appreciate how much detail is in it, and how much you overlook until you try and draw it. It's pretty wild. Yeah, right. Because the thing about learning to draw is that it's not so much like learning to get it down on the paper. It's actually training your brain to see it properly. Because like there are exercises like say you have a line drawing of a person and you try and copy it, your brain will be trying to think, no, that's how it's supposed to look. A good exercise is to get the line drawing of a person and draw it upside down, because then you're trying to force your brain to copy what is actually there. And look at the negative shapes around what you're drawing as well, which is, it sounds weird to say it, but draw the spaces around the object, not the object itself. One of the
lessons that we had when I was younger was to put like a bunch of chairs all mixed up on a table, and instead of actually drawing the chairs, you draw the gaps where they between the legs, and if you draw the negative space and think about how that looks, then you'll find that you're actually drawing the actual shape of the chair much more accurately. Same with people. I mean, when I've been doing life drawing, you've got to kind of take into account the stuff around them as well, because it makes it much more accurate. Yep. But there's a lot of tricks that you can do when you're starting to learn to draw that really forces your brain to see things properly.
Excuse me. Yeah, it's there's a lot of that drawing the spaces thing. You had me do that once. I remember drawing it. You sort of like to go draw a chair, but don't draw the chair. Draw the spaces around the chair. And I was like, yeah, that's a lot harder than it sounds.
It is, and it sounds weird, but it's really good at training your brain how to do things. It's all about training your brain. But I swear that I see things more. I see things differently now I've drawn them. It's like you start learning to look for details and stuff. It's really interesting the way that it changes the way that you perceive stuff, which is, there's no shortcuts to do learning how to do that. You just got to do the drawing. Unfortunately. And so. The more that you draw stuff, the better you see it, if that makes sense.
Yep. Nope, it makes sense. It does. I mean, it makes sense to me. Maybe not to somebody who's never tried to draw before, but, that's the point. So, well, this was really fun. And I, paid enough attention to learn a couple of new things. So that's pretty cool. Like this Misty technique here, I'm gonna have to find something to draw and practice that, because I've never even tried it before, and it's probably a lot tougher than it looks.
Yeah, the trick is not to use really dark darks on it.
That makes sense.
You've got to, you don't use you don't use black in it. You've got to just kind of like just use everything really muted. Just there's a line under that that you just don't go under on the actual color picker. You just you pick a level and you don't go any lower than that. So that's the trick to the Misty one. And it sometimes, it softens the edges of stuff and things too. But anyway, I hope what I've been saying today will be useful for people. If there's any questions, people can leave them in the comments, and
we'll see them. If you have questions, we'll see them. Katie will see them. I'll see them. We'll make sure Katie comes and answers them. She can answer them next week on the show, or just type you an answer. I don't know. I guess it probably depends on the nature of the question, but either way, we'll see them and we'll try and answer them for you. So
if it's if it's like something like what the airspeed velocity of a swallow is, I can't tell you.
Well, that sounds like a Googleable thing anyway.
Yeah.
That's Googleable. It needs to be an art specific question that isn't easily Googleable.
Yeah. So
and then because then you're just screwing with us and far too easy for that. So
if anyone wants to see more of these like educational ones, then let us know. Or if you want to see me like actually working on something, not comic related, or like actually see me drawing something. I mean, it's up to the viewers of the show what you'd like to see. So just let me know.
yeah, we can. I'm sure it'd be cool. Like we have to work on like how you can set up so that you can show some actual painting, traditional painting. But in the meantime, this stuff is really cool to see. So that's nice. It's really fun. So well, thanks. I mean, we had viewers popping in and out the whole time, so there was people watching. Just so like they were, this is a interesting time of day for Americans, so you'll probably get lots of people watching it after the fact, and I know that people in your country are asleep right now, so they might watch it tomorrow. So, but
this time, it's like only 11 o'clock at night.
So. Well, I don't know. I guess when you get old, you go to sleep earlier, right? So, well, at any rate, if you have any suggestions on what to draw next week, pop them in the comments. If you have any questions for Katie, pop them in the comments. And we'll see you next week. And Unlikely Heroes Studios, like UHS Presents, is on Monday. And we have a Kickstarter right now happening for Jonesy and Dr. Long. Space Nazis on the Moon. It's very cool. uhstudios.com/kickit. Go check it out. And we'll see you on Monday for UHS Presents. And I'm sure, Katie, you're not going to be on this coming show, but I'm sure you're going to be on a show in the sooner rather than later kind of future, so.
Yeah. Probably.
And then,
soon.
what Katie draws will be on next week, too, so. It's stuff.
And just because I love it, everyone should check out School of Fish on the Agents of Geekdom Network as well.
Yes,
I love watching
School of Fish is on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and it's at 11 o'clock Eastern. It's at 10 o'clock for me, so it's 11 o'clock Eastern. So definitely go check that out. And that's on the Agents of Geekdom Network, which is Agents of Geekdom everywhere, I think. So it's like, just go to YouTube and type in Agents of Geekdom. It'll come right up. And I have a thingy right up here. So it's at Agents of Geekdom. And we're good. So you'll find it. It's super easy. And thanks for watching. If you are watching this, then I thank you. And we'll see you next week.
See you next time.
I'll see you on Monday. Katie will definitely see you in a week. All right.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.